Environmental Racism and the Flint, Michigan Water Crisis by Tia Colbert. In 2016, the city government of Flint, Michigan switched the water source from the Hudson River to the highly polluted Flint River. For generations, the residents of Flint have been unable to drink the water. Although the crisis began in 2016, the relief efforts did not begin until 2021. Thus, the citizens feel that help arrived too late. This is one of many racial implications of the Flint water crisis. While efforts have been made to relieve the water crisis, the city continues to structurally disadvantage people of color and low-income communities. The design of the city is intentionally racist. Also, the crisis in Flint is considered a environmental racism. So, in order to examine the racial implications of the Flint, Michigan water crisis, we will define what environmental racism is and look at examples of it, as well as consider the environmental effects of the crisis on the community, and end by learning about the importance of advocating for African American communities. So, what is environmental racism? Environmental racism is a form of structuralized racism that mainly affects people of color and low-income communities. Examples of environmental racism include using tribal land for nuclear testing, cutting off access to clean water, establishing communities near hazardous waste zones, building schools on or near contaminated soil, designing lead-infused low-income housing, and redlining. People of color are often forced to live on the outskirts of town near hazardous waste zones due to redlining. Then, the city classifies these communities as underdeveloped and unsafe because they are near hazardous waste zones. People of color are more likely to be exposed to environmental racism because they are already living in poverty. Thus, environmental racism shows the effects of institutionalized racism on low-income communities and people of color. The effects of institutionalized racism are obvious. The effects of environmental racism include exposure to cancer and victimized people of color. For example, an entire family known as the Holt family drank contaminated water, and now cancer runs in their entire family and their community. Thus, people of color feel as though they are waiting for death, and that the government does not have any power to help them. Similarly, in Flint, the residents were drinking water that had a murky brown complexion and that corroded the pipes. Here is a picture of a sample from the Flint River. As you can see, it is indeed brown and murky and does not look safe to drink. Also, here is a picture of pipes corroded from the water. The residents developed liver and heart problems. Also, the amount of lead in their blood rose to unsafe levels. Additionally, drinking the water caused impaired cognitive functions in children. The residents voiced concerns about the racial implications of the water crisis. Firstly, the EPA did not intervene until the crisis worsened. Lead levels in the water had already exceeded safety levels. Also, there was obvious water pollution, and the residents' complaints were ignored because the majority of the residents of Flint are low income and African American. When it comes to people of color, the EPA and government agencies are often slow to respond. Thus, African Americans are often left to fend for themselves. Furthermore, it is difficult to find evidence of discrimination, so it is hard to build a strong case for racial discrimination. Therefore, more legislation is needed to address the problem of racial discrimination. Overall, the crisis worsened because help arrived too late and community concerns were not addressed. Thus, the impacts of environmental racism are real and cannot be ignored.